first time ever.
Hear you loud and clearly.
And it was going place.
That stuff's great.
But the game is not a roguelike.
Boomer shooter.
Bang.
Hello, this is John St. John, and you're listening to KWEP In the Keep, bringing you all the hits from the finest in the world of gaming and entertainment. Now sit back and relax as the drowned god Cthulhu lulls your mind with the tastiest talk in town.
Welcome to another chapter of In the Keep podcast. I'm your very own prophet of the drowned god, the Motherlode. The Keep is a collective of gaming enthusiasts compelled by the drowned god Cthulhu to frag and jib one another into oblivion for all eternity. Alright, so I know you tuned in to hear Vince's voice, and we'll get to that pretty soon, I promise, but before so, I've got to tell you the story about how this podcast came to be. It's been a long time coming. I started messaging back and forth a little bit with Vince almost a year ago. It was right before Realms Deep kind of time frame, totally by coincidence, because I think I didn't really know that Realms Deep was going to be happening yet. And I had only kind of peripherally known about Postal, right? Like I knew it was like important. I'd seen some videos about it, but I hadn't played it yet, and I didn't quite understand how important it was going to be to me at the time. But you know, I saw the opportunity. I found their website, and I was like, yeah, I'll play that game. Like I know it's supposed to be really important to this genre, and why the fuck not? Maybe I'll just reach out and see, you know, if I could get some time to talk with them, because a lot of times the motivation for me to get through a game, you know, like put it at the top of my list of something to take care of, is like knowing that I have an upcoming interview. So I went on the Running with Scissors website, and I found Vince Desi's email address, and also there I saw his like the phone number to the office, and I realized like, oh shit, that area code, that's my area code. And I realized that they were in Tucson. So anyway, I messaged Vince, and I'm like, hey, you know, if you guys would like to do an interview, I'd love to, you know, get in there and see what we can do together. I can even do it locally, which is actually pretty rare for the show. I've only done a few like in-person recordings, mostly at, you know, things like QuakeCon, stuff like that, and also with Mike. So for those of you who don't know, when I did reach out to Vince at that time, I believe he was out of town, and the pandemic had just kind of like become a big thing, and there was just no chance I was going to get to do it in person with Vince. So unfortunately, instead, I got Mike J. Had to go talk to that piece of crap. But you know, that sent me on this wild journey of, you know, the trailer introduction that we did for Realms Deep of what became Postal Brain Damage, and playing a whole fuckload of all the Postal games except 3. I've not touched 3, and I don't plan to ever touch 3. But yeah, here we are. So finally, Vince emails me, and he's like, you know, I'm back in town, or Mike let me know, or something like that. And I was like, well, this might be the time. So scheduled an appointment with Vince. And I was figuring, you know, well, let's go meet up, you know, have some breakfast or whatever, and then we'll meet up at the office, which is where I interviewed Mike. But Vince says, would you like to come to the Postal House? And I was like, the Postal House? Like, is that different than the office? Like, is there like just a house for the... No. He means his house that he bought with the money that he made from the first Postal game. And it's way out in the boonies, like... if you've ever been to Tucson, like it's surrounded on all sides by the mountains. So I've got to drive basically fully across town from where I live towards this giant mountain range that you can see. And in the foothills of the mountains, I come to this beautiful home. I mean, like probably the nicest house I've ever seen personally or been in. And walk up to the front door. I've got my buddy Jake with me, who will be there peripherally through the interview. He drove and took care of the recording, you know, managing the recording while I was talking to Vince and everything. He even pipes in a few times. And we pull into the driveway, we go up, and there's this big double door, and I'm like, man, this is going to be fucking cool. And before we even got a chance to knock, there's Vince, opens the door. Ty, how are you? And I got to tell you, he was one of the most amazingly, like, just special people I've gotten a chance to talk to on this podcast. And there's a few reasons for that. One, I mean, we've been through this before. People have a public perception of someone, right, where you see their social media or you know about the work they've done and everything. And, like, I'm sure if you're here, you love Postal and you get it. You're right, you get it. But Vince is a guy with he's got opinions. He comes from a different time, man. He was born in the 50s. He's seen a lot of fucking shit that you and I probably never be able to imagine. He's done everything. He's been rich. He's been poor. He's published games that have taken him all around the globe. He's been involved in a number of industries. I mean, he's been in the video game industry since Atari, which we're going to talk about here pretty soon when we get into the interview. And I just learned so much, not just about video games, but like about life from spending this few hours that I did with Vince. And I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. It was a game changer for me. And I'm hoping that through the recording and everything, you'll get a little bit out of it, a little percentage of what I got out of being there. And I'm glad to share it with you. That said, I don't do a lot of in-person interviews, so I made a rookie mistake. I walked in there and I put the microphone down on the desk in between us, and I forgot that Vince is Italian, so he does a little bit of like banging on the desk when he talks. I've done my best to mitigate most of that, but you're going to hear a bit in there. Not that big a deal. Also, there's a part where the landscapers were outside and you could actually hear the, I guess it's the lawnmower or weed whacker or whatever in the background. I've also tried my best to mitigate that. It will be present, but it's mostly just like an ambient background noise and not anything that differs from the conversation. So, suck it down. I don't give a fuck. I did my best with it. The conversation is well worth anything you've got to like kind of ignore to get to it. I am thrilled. So without any further ado, I'm going to play some music from Postal, and you will be in the keep with Vince Desi. Good thing we got this bandana. Vince, how the hell are you?
Good morning. Nice to be here.
What does a chief rod officer do exactly?
Pretty much enjoy as much as I can every day and simply not take anything for granted. People ask, what does that mean? Well, when I was a teenager, me and a couple of my dear friends, we created a group called the Rods.
Okay. And
that's because in physics, 96 poles equals a rod. And that was basically representative of our cocks. And, we were horny teenagers. And to this day, well, there's three of us, and actually a picture right behind us, three of us. One of us passed away many years ago. But that's why, and as the company's evolved and we like to have fun, I run the company, but CEO is boring, so I'm the chief route officer.
So, are you the bell-bottom pants guy, or?
I'm a guy on the right with the big hair.
The naked guy, okay, with the afro. I don't know why I didn't guess immediately. That's like, Jake, our producer's here with us, but dude, his wife's been talking about, we gotta throw like a 50s Grease party theme or whatever, and like that's exactly how she wants him to dress, essentially.
Well, that's 1971.
But that's the thing about Grease, right? It was like they were going for the 50s, but it's like the 70s, like tinted, rose tinted glasses idea of what the 50s were like. So weird. You've, I don't mean to call you old, but you've been around for fucking ever, and so like. A lot of what I want to cover in this interview is just getting your perspective on, just life in general. Like, it's not all got to be about video games and shit like that, but I'd like to just get your perspective of like the changing world and how you've seen the culture of games shift over time too. So like as we were talking a little bit ago, you developed on the Atari even. And if I understand, I don't know other reporters how accurately they've depicted your career, but my understanding is that you didn't really like intend to be in the video game industry at all.
Correct.
So let's take us from like your mom pushes you out into the world. How did you get from there to video game developing?
Well, in the late 70s, around 78, I was actually in what was called the disco business. And I've always been in the entertainment business in some capacity, artist, music, writing. And so after a year of the disco business, I wanted to get a legit job. So I answered an ad in the New York Times that said, earn $50K, big bucks. And I became a headhunter on Wall Street. And that meant I was recruiting people that were in what was called management information systems back then. So it was basically programmers, recruiting technical talent. What happened was around 81 or so, Atari had been bought by Warner Brothers. That's before Time Warner. And they moved an office to New York City. And I basically started recruiting for them. So I got several people on board as programmers, then as artists, then as musicians. And I found myself as a producer there was no such title back then as a producer. And then what happened is I had left the company I was with and I created my own company called Desi Network. And so I started representing, different talent. And the first big titles we made were like Spy vs. Spy for Mad Magazine on the Commodore 64.
Yeah.
We made a lot of games for Sesame Street, Ghostbusters for Activision, Tom and Jerry. I mean, a whole bunch of them throughout the 80s. So it was interesting because while I was an artist when I was very young, I learned that I'm better at being in the business of entertainment. I can't sing. I can't play a fucking tune. But that's okay. I can sing when I want and I can do anything I want. And so I kind of really was a natural evolution. And I enjoy working with creative people. And a lot of creative people don't have good business sense. So it kind of was a nice marriage, if you will. And here we go. Fast forward from the 80s into the 90s. I move to Arizona in 92. And then we stopped making kids games, etc. And in 96, 97, we created the first Postal.
So when it comes to like all of the stuff that you did before Postal, did you make a WWF game at some point?
We made the first WWF game.
The very first one.
Very first one with a company called Micro League Sports.
Yeah.
It was Hulk Hogan, Randy Macho Man Savage. Actually, we were, for those wrestling fans, we were going to do Junkyard Dog. I forgot who the other guys were.
Ultimate Warrior?
No, Ultimate Warrior came like later in the 80s
Okay.
after Hulk was on his way out.
Okay.
And but it was kind of interesting because the very first games, that's when digitizing was becoming a new technical phenomenon, and as compared to just pixels and sprites and things. So we had a drop Junkyard Dog, because he was a black dude, and they didn't digitize well back then.
Oh wow!
And,
okay, I took that the total opposite direction. I was like, whoa.
Well, I'm just saying it was what it was,
Yeah.
and we had no say over the creative.
Yeah.
The people at the WWF, they said it's going to be these 4 wrestlers and this is how it's going to go, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I remember we had to take him out because it wasn't working technically.
That's amazing. I never could have imagined getting that answer to that question. So, I mean, was it like a big deal at the time, or were all of these games for you just kind of like, yeah, this is how I make my money?
Oh, I loved it. It was very cool. I got to meet a lot of these people, people that, look, my kids, we used to go to the WWF. I took them. Mm-hmm. So this was like, wow, I'm going to make the WWF game. That was pretty wild. Making Spy vs. Spy. I got to meet Antonio Prohayas, who was a Cuban refugee. and that he was the creator of Spy vs. Spy. This is great stuff. I mean, as a kid, I grew up with Mad Magazine. Here, all of a sudden, I'm with the people, the founder of the magazine, so very cool. And then when I even got to do some like Tom and Jerry and some other Hanna-Barbara titles, Fred Flintstone, Jetson, people like this. I grew up with those cartoons. I started drawing. I started doing animation as a kid with Fred Flintstone. And then later on, I got to meet Bill Hanna from Hanna-Barbera. What an honor that was. That was like, oh my God. And he was such a nice, humble guy. I mean, this is the guy that created Fred Flintstone. Wow, that was like pretty cool, So, yeah, things like that. I've always, I find meeting certain people that are successful is always interesting, and you can learn a lot. But what's also interesting is you meet people that are in the spotlight or so-called celebrities, and it's a sad thing to say, but a lot of them are assholes. And I don't know why. I mean, maybe they were assholes before they became famous, probably. Yeah. Because I've met people that are just really nice, cool people that are humble and they're very successful. And I don't think the whole Hollywood bullshit, ever took over their personality.
Yeah, I mean, I've met my fair share of like moderately famous people, and they're really nice, humble people like you, and then there's complete jack-offs like Mike J or someone like that. And,
right.
And no, it's weird how people get that different like kind of perspective. Like I don't understand at what point. I'd love to get to that point, I guess, and make $1 million, but like, where do you find that line where you just decide that you're better than another human being? Like,
I don't know. I'm blessed. I always said I'm blessed. I have great parents and my upbringing, and I know it might sound funny, but I regret nothing. I really do. I regret nothing.
I mean, I hope that when I'm your age, I say the same thing. I want my life to be like Forrest Gump's life, where it's just a constant series of like, and then you did what? Which is kind of how your biography reads at this point. Like,
well, believe me, it's not that I regret nothing doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes.
Of course. Yeah.
I just go with the approach of I'm blessed to be here, and I am thankful and I'm respectful, and whatever, something goes wrong, I'm a big believer in, things start as issues. Negative things start as issues. If you don't address an issue, it becomes a problem. And then if you don't address it when it's a problem, it becomes a crisis.
Right.
But this took me a long time to realize that, because I think there's a natural tendency to just fuck off and, what the hell, I don't care. And I mean, my God, how many times have I said I don't care in my life? Way too many.
Yeah.
And then you realize as you get older, wow, I could have done this or that. But you have to accept that the past is the past and you can't change it. That's the essence of I don't regret anything.
Yeah, I mean, I never really thought about it. The fact that the slogan for Running with Scissors would be a motto with wisdom hidden behind it. There's actually something deeper here.
Well, I like to think that the other day I was online and somebody was asking me a game question about, why in Postal games it's, you don't have long drawn out stories and backstory. And my whole thing from the very beginning has been video games are games. And as a kid, I played games in the street. And what is playing a game? Well, play a game, you could play games by yourself, some games, or you play games with your friends, but you're playing. See, the verb here is playing. Yeah. And playing is something that should be fun. Okay? So a video game should be fun to play. Now, one of the things I've always liked about, and we have in our minds in the design process, is playing Postal is fun and funny. I mean, some of the shit is just hilarious. And so it's one of those rare games where you could watch somebody play Postal and be laughing your ass off.
Yeah. Because
you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just seen that. So to me, we don't try to make serious games. I'm not here to create a backstory. I'm not here to make a movie. And that's kind of our personal philosophy. Like, to each his own. Other people like to have, they have their own vision. And I'm a big fan of, it's your vision, you do it.
It's interesting because right before we came over here, Jake came over to my house at like, what time you come over? Like 6 o'clock in the morning?
6 o'clock.
He's like, hey dude, I just want to like get an idea of what we're going to be doing. So I was like, okay. And I showed him videos like that Civi had done of like Postal 2 and Postal 4 and everything. And I realized as we're watching it that without the explanation of what's going on here, like, you know, he's got a bitch wife and he's got to do all these chores and everything. It's just a game that to him, it's like this guy's just peeing on people and shooting them in the head for no reason, just executing civilians. But you're right, like that. It's not something you can really understand without playing it. But even if you don't understand it, if you don't need that extra backstory to have fun with it, to like understand it, like just being on the joke and have a good time.
Yeah, look, have fun. You're playing a game. I mean, so to me that's kind of the raw principle of game design.
You ever run across John Carmack?
I never met him.
Yeah.
I mean, years ago I had written him, and I mean he's a brilliant talent. But to me, he's also, I don't want to call John a grandfather, but he's kind of like a father of all, obviously first-person shooters, and his position in the industry, and to this day, he has motivated and inspired so much of what we see today. It's phenomenal. I mean, and his old partner Romero too. I mean, I'm a big fan of people that put their sweat into it. Yeah. And those guys, they were young and they put their heart into it and they came out with Doom and it was phenomenal and to this day. So these are, to me, if there's a Hall of Fame, and I know they've got some video game Hall of Fame and shit like that, but there's a reason that, for me, the Hall of Fame would have very few people in it. Like today, the Baseball Hall of Fame, like I said, I'm a little older than you guys. I'd probably throw out 50% of the people in the Baseball Hall of Fame. It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Rock
and Roll Hall of Fame too.
Rock.
I think Jay-Z, or who was it that they put LL Cool J in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Yeah, I mean, put him in some other Hall of Fame, but you don't belong in the Rock one.
I guess Rock the Bells or whatever. Like, is that a rock
I don't
song?
know. I just think today we've kind of, there's this constant rush to glorify everything, reward everyone, be inclusive. Fuck that. Don't be inclusive. Look, you want the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? There's like a jazz thing, right? If you're a jazz master, Coltrane, okay, whatever, Miles Davis, these are tremendous talents. They don't. To me, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame can maybe be with the, from the Elvis era.
Yeah.
And you go forward with, Beatles, Stones, keep going, Led Zeppelin, Jim Morrison, The Doors, things like that. I mean, there's rock and roll, and then there's all this other stuff. Yeah. And all the other stuff deserves credit. But I don't understand why there's this need to give everybody an award or make them honor them. Honor them for what they've done. But that's the way I think. I don't know.
No, there's definitely a generational gap. I think we got off track there, though. The reason why I asked about John Carmack was, he had that quote that everybody constantly reiterates about how the story to a game should be like the story to a porno. It shouldn't matter. It's expected to be there. There has to be some sort of reason for you to be doing what you're doing, but it's not important or as important as just enjoying what you're doing in the game. And that's one of the things that they just nailed with Doom. Still to this day, I know several people right now who are still developing games on the Doom 2 engine. And that still rings true. It doesn't, as long as the gameplay there is fundamentally fun to play and relatively problem-free. Running with Scissors, you guys post some real borderline stuff, but that's what's so amazing about it is that, the story doesn't fucking matter. It's just all about having fun. It's all about exactly what you said.
When I was a long time ago in the original office of Atari when they came to Manhattan, I don't know who it was, and there was a chalkboard, and somebody wrote there kind of like the simple principle of game design. Mm-hmm. Easy to learn, hard to master. And then I think about, Mario, Super Mario. Everybody played, and everybody could get through the first level.
Yeah.
Easy to learn, very hard to master. And that's such a great general rule in that, again, it's a game. Have fun. Invite people. Make it be a motivational type experience. But again, not everybody should win. Not everybody gets to the end. Not everybody is an expert.
Right.
So, I mean, that's okay. So that was like something I always remember that. It's just, I mean, I've had a lot of people over the years come to me and they want to get in the game business, or I'm making a game, and I'll sit with them and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, you're creating the Bible. Like, this is your first title. Maybe you should go back and just try to have something really simple.
Yeah.
Which is what I've also recommended, and I've taught over the years in different scenarios. It's a lot better, I think, to have a plan, a goal that is within reasonable reach, so that you can experience the learning process and the accomplishment and then build on it. But a lot of people, without some guidance, they literally, I've had people submit to me like 150 pages of a game design, but they never wrote a line of code. They're not an artist. And I'm like, man, this is deep shit.
Write a novel.
Take it. Well, also, maybe you should try writing a book. I don't know. And so it has its challenges. And look at today. I mean, there's a new company, Roblox, just came out, and they've got that game from last year. And, the whole idea of kind of like building like off of Minecraft, whatever. And this has come really, I mean, my God, from 30 years ago, here we are today. Anybody with certain tools can build simple games. And that in itself is a fantastic thing.
I agree with you.
That is like, it's just brilliant. Look, you look at music, get a kid a drum set. Doesn't mean he's going to become Ginger Baker, okay? And for people that don't know that was the drummer in Cream. And for people that know who Cream was, was with Eric Clapton. Thank you. Yes. Thank you.
You couldn't have gotten too more like in tune with 70s like rock music.
So
25.
There you go. That whole kind of segueing around here. But it's okay. Same thing, give a kid a good guitar or whatever it is. I don't know. When I was a kid, we had some kid, he had a violin. I was like, holy shit, a violin. I didn't even know what the fuck that was. I was like, I never had an instrument. My parents, we weren't in that position to get me anything other than the can off the garbage pail. So.
That is a huge problem that I've observed. I wouldn't say it's a problem, man. It's just the world happening in real time. But like, I had the benefit of talking to a lot of people from very different perspectives. So, it may be Monday and I'm talking to some 20-year-old kid who's, still living with his folks, but he's like pumping out 20 games a year or whatever, and like knocking it out of the park every time. But they don't have that business perspective or that like insight on like, okay, what's the scope of the projects I should take on? Or, and then I've also talked to another kid the same age who's like, well, I've been working on the same game since I was 14, and then
it'll never come out.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, not talking about anybody specifically, but I'm sure they know who they are. But in terms of it being attainable, and that's something that really stood out to me from what you said. And I've been preaching this for a long time. Like we use the SMART model. Like, is it something that you can actually attain? Is there a time you can put on it? Can you reasonably accomplish the task yourself, or do you need to bring in other people? And if so, what does that cost? Do you have the money to do it? Creative people don't think like that for the most part. They think about like, well, I have this vision and I have to see it through. And you've always been the other side of that. You've always been in the position where you're like, okay, you're managing. You're taking care of the business aspect for other people. So if I were ever gonna make a game, I would want to hear like, how do you do it? That I don't want to hear like just the story of like, oh, I'm really passionate. Like I'm inspired by passion just like everybody else, but passion doesn't mean shit unless it becomes a reality. Yeah,
listen, if it's not completed, no one will ever play it.
Yeah.
No, and that's fine if it's a hobby and your thing. But a lot of people will write to me and they'll say, I'm studying programming, or I'm learning animation. and I want to be in the game industry, and what do you recommend, and da-da-da. Some of the typical advice I always give is, if you're a programmer or becoming a programmer, find someone who is becoming an artist. And the same thing, if you're an artist, find someone that's becoming a programmer or somebody with game design. Today, I mean, in the old days, one person made the design, code, and art. Literally one person, okay? Now you've got teams of 1,000 people. But for people just starting out, be it in high school or college, because if you could, take your programming skills, working with some game design, working with an artist, and put together a little simple program, something that runs, something that's almost like a Pac-Man, which is not the easiest, but not really challenging. Make something and work together, because a programmer can't make it on his own. An artist can't make it without a program. It's a little team, but you don't need 100 people. You just need 2-3 people that have the same desire. And this has worked. I mean, I've helped a lot of people, and they do it. And obviously, some people just get frustrated and I can't work with so and so, man. He fucked up with that. And then you hear from the other person, they're like, oh man, I've been drawing all this stuff, and the guy don't. Well, that just means you're not the right partner. But as a formula, I really think it works, and it's important to. How would you say that whole thing about take baby steps? It's okay. First you crawl, then you have baby steps, before you run. So, and that kind of is a reality check.
Yeah, you're not going to come out of the gate with, a Skyrim-sized game.
It's just
impossible.
People, and I don't know, today it seems like reality doesn't count for much, so I don't know what the hell we're looking at in the future. But I don't know. It's pretty wild.
I think we're seeing the point of entropy happen in real time right now, because the AAA game industry is at this point where they're being forced to consider, and I'm sure you've seen this happen, like Ragnarok, and the cycle continues over and over again, but they've reached a point where, like, okay, we need to make this game on this new platform bigger and better than anything we've ever made before. So we need to hire more people to do it. But we have to charge the same amount of money, so therefore we have to sell it to X, million more people. And how long is that going to be sustainable? And I question it every day when I see it. And personally, I go way out of my way to not play. That's the whole reason why I host a podcast about independent games, because I don't care to pay $60, $70, $80 for a brand new game.
Well, I think I'm not so sure how many people realize that when you look at these massive budgets, a large part of it goes not to game development.
Right.
It goes to management. It goes to a lot of bullshit expenses. And then there's a big chunk goes to marketing, which I think is valuable. Mm-hmm. So it's not, okay, the budget's $100 million. You didn't spend $100 million on design, coding, and art. There's a serious chunk of that's going to something else. So there's a kind of I think a disconnect between, this game costs so much, and, well, there's a reason it costs so much. Because a lot of people that don't deserve to get to pay the salaries they're getting, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and there's shareholders or stockholders, and oh my God, a lot of waste. Just like in our federal government. There's a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of waste. We run here a very lean operation. Well, it's our money, okay? There is nobody's funding us. Nobody's giving me millions of dollars. So when I look at what are we doing, it's not just a sense of can we afford it? It's a question of prioritizing. We're constantly prioritizing. And that's just a management technique to making sure you get the most out of your dollar. And also, if something's not going right, you have to cut your losses sooner than later. In big shops or big dev companies, when you're funded by the Activisions of the world, a lot of times a problem that may occur might not get discovered for a week, might not get then corrected a month or two later. Are you kidding me? The position I'm in, we have a problem. I like to know about it this morning, and we're going to fix it before it's afternoon.
Right.
Because it's that simple, That's how I approach it. Otherwise, how many times can I mortgage my house? A lot.
I know that's something we were talking about earlier about how like I'm in the weather career field. You know, that's my day job, and there's no time to argue with another person or like you know, it's like we need to make a decision. Well, I don't know how I feel. Like it doesn't matter how you feel. Like there's a tornado or not, and you need to make a decision now. Like, yeah, and it's going to either destroy a trailer park in Kansas or they're going to evacuate beforehand. Like, yeah. But it's going to destroy them. Like, there's no way.
No, it has to do with that whole reality check. To me, is about staying on course within the real world. Mm-hmm. I'm not talking about opinion or desire or taste, whatever. It's all up to you. It's okay. My concern today is with this cancel culture bullshit. I like that people have a difference of opinion. I like that some people want to go left, some people want to go right, some people want to go straight. I just don't like when people disagree and they're telling me that I have to do what they like. Get the fuck out of here. That ain't gonna happen. Okay, not in my personal life, not in the world I operate in, not with a lot of my friends. I don't care what you want to do. Okay, you do it. You do it. Just don't affect me. You know, I'm pretty okay with the whole libertarian lifestyle and approach, but it's getting a little crazy today.
I mean, that's a fundamental part of what I think makes America, not to get all patriotic and everything, but like that's what makes this country special, is the idea that, you know, we can all be, you know, I mean, it was originally like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, like, well, Protestants and Muslims, and like, we can all get along.
Good.
Yeah,
it's all good. It's just keep your personal.
Yes.
Don't push on me your personal. I don't. Although recently I was talking with somebody and tell you how far people are getting, I said, look, I don't give a shit if you want to fuck a gorilla. That's your business, as long as you do it in your bedroom. And then they actually said to me, but it could be rape. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And they're like, well, the gorilla might not want to engage or whatever. And I said, holy shit. I said, I really hadn't thought about that. That could be animal abuse. I mean, maybe you got a point here. I'm open-minded. Maybe you got a point. But then I said, I don't know. Not many gorillas are going to get fucked that don't want to, because... That's
what I'm thinking. Is like, yeah.
That's a tough call. Maybe it's I need a different example. But even that, I'm not into abuse in any form. I don't, call it consensual, right? Whatever. Like even in the whole game design, we've always had two rules: no children, no abuse of women. I don't, like in real life, I don't understand rape. I mean, to me, and I'm not this woman fanatic or whatever you want to call it today. I just believe in good, healthy lifestyle and be positive and don't abuse people. I don't get that. I mean, and don't abuse children, don't abuse women, don't abuse.
One of the wisest things I've ever heard, actually, it was the lead singer of Slayer, the metal band, right? And he says the difference between right and wrong is that everyone agrees on what's wrong, right? So what is correct, we can debate about, but wrong is a consensus. Everybody understands, and if you don't understand that murder is wrong, that taking advantage of another human being is wrong, I mean, then you're an outlier, Yeah.
But today it's getting to the point where it seems like a lot of shit that we think is wrong is coming up that maybe it's not. I mean, I don't know. I kind of agree with you. I mean, look, to me, the world is not black and white. There's no way you could live black and white. It's a very fluid social system we have. But I prefer to think of it in terms of or good and evil or harm and peace. If you're harming someone, it's bad news.
Yeah.
It's just that's not a good thing.
Unless they're causing harm to you or your family.
Well, then it's different. Then it's called retribution or just fucking taking care of business, eye for an eye. That's very different than...
Yeah. It's almost like people have taken the time to write books about basic principles that we should live our lives based upon, and that might have... maybe they're not 100% correct, but like maybe they knew what they were talking about to some extent, and we should at least listen to some of what they have to say. Like that's how I've always felt. Like let me rant for a bit. I feel that this generation has a tremendous disrespect or like irreverence for the concept of wisdom. Like, why is it all of a sudden that people my age think that people older than us just don't know fucking anything? Like, I'm an idiot. Like, I have been for my entire life up to now, and I'm less of an idiot today than I was yesterday because I've learned from either making my own mistakes or from hopefully some wiser older person told me a mistake that I could avoid.
Yeah.
And so why are we in this position now?
Every day I make mistakes. Every day. And there's no doubt about it, that old saying of, don't do the same thing, you make a mistake twice. Well, I'm part of that club that's made it 9-10 times. I wasn't a fast learner. When I was a kid, I can remember my mother turning the stove on the pilot, and she'd like grab me and put my hand next to the fire, and like teach me like, go ahead, you want to put your hand in there? You want to put your hand in there? It's going to burn. And I mean, now you think about it, it's like today they probably would want to arrest her or some crazy shit. But I learned that's really hot. That's hot, and my mother never put my hand in the fire, but it was the principle of she was trying to teach me, there's some things don't do. I mean, are you that dense that you really think you need to jump off a bridge to see what it feels like? Okay, not a good thing. And when I was a freshman in high school, I remember I had a teacher, and he wrote on the board the word reciprocity. I didn't know what it meant. And then it was what do they call it? Some people refer to it as the Cardinal Rule, the Golden Rule. And I know it's in the Bible somewhere, but do unto others as you want them to do to you. It's life really. If everyone just got that, that would be fantastic. Adios. What happened? You can't get around me?
Maybe me.
All right. I gotta
wrap it up real quick.
Just cut it for a moment.
Yeah, we're good. We're back online. Okay. So the theme of what you were just going on about anyway was the idea of, being thankful for what you get. And I remember, because you telling us the airplane story, like, don't ask me how my fucking flight was. It was like, who cares? Like, I made it. Like, I'm just thankful to be here. You know Louis C.K., the comedian?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
Yes. So he had this awesome fucking joke about when you're on a plane, and he was on the first plane that ever had Wi-Fi, like in flight, and people are sitting there and they're like, "Oh, the Wi-Fi is slow," and like you're flying, you're literally flying, and you're complaining that the Wi-Fi isn't, like the speed of light is not fast enough for you while you're flying through the air, and it is so weird. We're constantly kind of building more and more on top of the foundation of society to the point where you get to, it's like making a machine, right? The more complicated your machine is, the more likely that things can break and go wrong. The more lubricant you need to keep it functioning correctly. To circle it back around to game dev, the bigger your game dev team is, the more likely it is that somebody's going to need a day off or a vacation, or like somebody's going to run into stress, that somebody doesn't have the same creative vision as someone else, and all this kind of thing. And that's what I love about what you guys do, is that this is all basically just your vision. Coming to life.
Not to be throwing up here too many typical or principles, but yesterday I had a meeting with our art director Josh and with Tim, makes our videos. And I don't know if you got to see the monkey video recently. It's phenomenal. I mean, it just, I watch it so many times by myself. I just love it. And we were talking about, as we're now getting towards the end of making Postal 4, it's a very large open sandbox type game. So while most of the code is functioning and we're just really adding content for Thursday and for Friday, there was another saying, which was 90% of what makes a game great happens in the last 10% of the game development. So it's kind of like, you're not done. Just because we only have one more day to do. No, everything that works before has to continue to work, because you were talking about building upon. It gets more complicated. The integration. It's not as simple as adding another layer. That layer has to be integrated into all the underlying layers.
Yeah.
And it's a challenge, And of course, when you want to add just something as simple as add a new weapon. Well, how does it affect everything else? Because shit will happen. So,
yeah.
But again, I think you have to have that some common sense, not too much, because I am very big on keeping blue skies for the creative factors in the game. I don't like telling people, giving them limits. I like things to kind of just begin with an explosion and kind of exploding as often as you can. And then obviously things actually have a natural way of settling. What works, what doesn't work, which is more difficult, and then it becomes an issue of, well, if we do this, we might have to cut that. So you weigh. It's a process. There's a lot of things that are in the beginning are on paper. They never get into the game. They just don't, for endless reasons. And it's okay. That's why the beauty today is, that's why there's, downloadable content. That's why there's a weekend. That's why there's no reason to stop creativity. You just have to conform, and that's a tricky word, so that you have a viable product that people that becomes in some releasable form. And even if you look at early access in Steam, it's literally active, live, real-time development, and it's an ongoing process. I love it. It's great. But you still have to make it available.
Right.
And I think that, and it's tricky because, one of the things we've concentrated heavily on is when we have a release or a major release a day, a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, we're constantly having updates in between. And it's very time consuming and taxing. But I've also felt that it's important as we have improvements to share those improvements, not to hold back. In other words, we can't make releases every week. That's just not realistic. In the very beginning you could, and then as the game gets larger and larger, you just can't release every little thing as it happens. You have to do it more in stages, or, sometimes you could have a bulk of new content or updates. So it's a manageable issue as long as you have the right approach. And to me, the right approach is there is no fixed approach. Because the moment or the time when you decide that this is the way it has to be, that will end your creativity. So instead, I prefer to just stay focused, be flexible, and go forward.
One of the things that I really wanted to kind of dive into was, this is so completely on topic. This has been a really organic conversation, so I've enjoyed it a lot. But you have experience in the times when consoles, were what you're mainly developing for, and also, since the Postal series has come out, you guys have been, up until very recently, PC exclusive. You guys just put out Postal Redux on the Switch, if I'm not mistaken.
And last week on PlayStation 4-5.
Yeah, that's a good step, I guess. But the nature of PC games has always kind of been we're at the cutting edge of what we can do with technology. While when you're working with any console, that console has a lifespan. So it comes out and it's the hottest, newest thing, and then until the next console comes out, you're locked into that piece of hardware. So no matter how much you want to do more with your game, it still has to fit into the hardware that you have available to you, or the software, or whatever it happens to be. And I'm curious, what did you learn from the perspective of game design in terms of keeping things realistic, working on things like the Atari?
In the very beginning, when there was Atari 2600, and then there were the computers where I believe it was Atari 400, 800. Mm-hmm. There was also something called the Trash 80, which was the Radio Shack's machine.
Yeah.
And there was something actually, Commodore VIC-20, before the Commodore 64. Now, these were all using different assembly languages, 6502 on the Commodore side, on the Apple side. And the PC came along. And then the first real big game console after Atari was Nintendo came out. And it did change the way people think. Well, first of all, you had to get a dev kit. Okay, that was unheard of. How do you? And then a lot of people were building their own tools. And the lifespan is a true fact to see from the business side, because how long is it going to take to make a game? How much is it going to cost? When can it come out? How long could the system that's be available that it's going to be playing on? And then there was something called, people began what was referred to as porting. So I have my game on PC and I want to put it on Commodore or whatever it was, or it's on Nintendo. Then Sony came out with PlayStation, and and then there was something called cross-platform development, where you could simultaneously develop on 3 platforms. Well, I've never really experienced that with any level of success. We've always, I'm talking even before the Postal days. I believe that, there's a base code, if you will, and then you can, before a project is complete, you can start the process of how will this port over, okay? And then there was something, sometimes people call it an adaption, because a straight port, this is all bullshit terms.
Right.
In the end, you have a game, say on PC, now you want to put it on PlayStation, now you want to put it on Xbox, you want to put it on Switch. There's going to be differences.
Right.
And that's okay. Because look, each system is its own hardware, but at the same time, it has its own internals. Some things can happen easier, harder, whatever. And then from the publishing perspective, you've got to think in terms of, and look at the biggest major games, they want to have simultaneous release. That doesn't mean one person or one team is making a game on all the platforms. You've got multiple teams working on, there's the core, if you will, and then you've got the adaptation to another system. And and today, look, the size of the games today are massive. Yesterday we were talking about Postal 4. We wanted to come out on other consoles, and it will. We're now in good shape with Sony, we're in good shape with Nintendo, and we're still waiting on Microsoft, and we'll see. But there's a lot of work that has to go into how do you take this massive game. First of all, you have to optimize the PC title to its best. And then we're going to be working with other teams that are experts at this. That's something you learn over time also in today's world. Have somebody do what they do really well. It's better to work with them. If the person is a 2D artist, don't ask them to be an animator. There are people that are animators, there are people that are 2D artists, there are people that are 3D artists, there are character artists, there's asset building. It goes on and on and on. And if you could afford, obviously, why are some of these teams so huge? Well, it's because the tremendous amount of content and the assets that need to be created. And in order to have it be at its best, you want people that their forte is in this single element, if you will.
Right.
And this is all part of the history of game development. I kid you not, in the very early days at Atari, a programmer was given a game, and I remember there was one musician in the office, or sound person, okay, and I think there were about 6 games in development. So that one sound person supported sound, okay, for all 6 games, and each game had maybe 2 artists, and each game was one program. Yeah. So you have one programmer, 2 artists, and a sound guy. Everybody sharing. It's a little different today.
One of my favorite magazines is a Retro Gamer magazine, and they do every issue they have an article where they'll take a game from the 80s or whatever, and they'll show every different port or adaptation that had been done for it on each console that was available at the time. Because I think we have this idea now. I think a lot of people are like, oh, we have so many different options. Like we have the PlayStation, we have the Xbox. We're like, okay, all right, let's slow down a bit. Because if you look back at then, it was like, okay, we have Atari, Amiga, we have the fucking Commodore, we have and then just on down the line, and all, not even to mention arcade machines. And there would be this chore of like, okay, somebody releases a game, now we have to report that game to every potential, audience that it could release to. And the hardware was so fundamentally different that they would end up with basically different games with the same brand name on them. And we're in a position now where like the big major difference, right, between a game that's released on a PlayStation and a game that was released on a Switch, other than changing the control scheme, is like, okay, we got to tone the graphics down a bit. Like it's not that wildly different. So I'm actually that's kind of what I was getting at with my original question, is like, when you're looking at taking a game like Postal 4 to the PlayStation, like what you just have a guy whose like job it is, or a team whose job it is, like, yeah, I'm really good at porting things to the PlayStation, and that's all it is?
Yeah, because see, our team, which is about 40 people now, we're all PC Unreal driven, and well, I mean, they're focused on the game. Then there's going to be downloadable content. Mm-hmm. Then there's going to, obviously, at the same time, there's always improvements. And then there'll be future, like an add-on, which would be the weekend, etc. This is all to come.
Yeah.
Rather than have my team that does not have PlayStation experience, there are porting companies today. Companies that just port games. This is their focus. They'll take your game and they'll put it on whatever console you want. And we're starting to talk with companies like that because it will deliver a higher quality product. It will come out sooner. I mean, I could say, hey, I want to do it. I mean, there's people on the team like, well, we should make it ourselves. Well, yeah, how many years is it going to fucking take and how much more money? I mean, no, let's be realistic. This is where the business hat comes on, right, and says, we're going to do this and we're going to have other people help us do that. And so, yeah, there's porting houses that specialize, and we will see. We're really in the early stage of that, and the goal obviously is to get on PlayStation and Nintendo and on Xbox, and ideally we would work with one house who would take our core code and make it happen on those other consoles. There's always the possibility that there might be a house that's really great at Nintendo, and so maybe we'll wind up working with two teams. I don't know. Haven't decided that yet.
I mean, that's a great business to be in. Can't believe I didn't think of it myself. I don't know. It's kind of wild just thinking about being in the business of just taking other people's creative ideas and all you do is just port them, right? Like, how rewarding could that be? I wonder.
I would think very, because if it's something you love doing, and especially if you get to work on a game that you love,
right? Okay,
and then also it could be financially rewarding. It all depends. I mean, how the deals are structured.
I talked to a good friend of mine who's a Brazilian fella, but his job is to translate games. Huh. Localization. Yeah. And for every, like, I got to localize, like, this awesome thing I wanted to do, there's, like, 200 mobile games or, some shit that no one gives a fuck about. And, like, I don't know, I guess it's with any job. I mean, with my job, too. There's days when I like, oh, yes, I saved everybody from a fucking tornado. And then there's days when I'm
and it's like an interview. Today, you're with me, and, I don't know, maybe when you leave, you'll turn to Jake and say, well, this was really cool. It was different. And not every interview is as exciting, or some are more boring. And your fans will tell you when you post your podcast, people will respond. Yeah. And hopefully you'll have a good response to this podcast.
I'm sure I will, but I don't know. I just enjoy conversation, even if it's like I've had conversations that were difficult, with different developers and different people in the industry and all this kind of thing. And I've never walked away from a podcast, any interview that I've ever done, really saying that well, that was not a good use of my time, because I very much believe like I learned something from everybody I talked to, even if it's not a good thing that I learned. But
well, that's because you come into it with a good open attitude. Before we started recording, you had asked me if there anything, and I said, look, you could ask me anything, just don't change my answers. And then you said, fine, well, I'm gonna, basically we'll go over some, different questions, etc., and I'm not going to change anything. And I said, well, when the time comes, just let us have it so we could all, promote it online, and so all our fans could hear it. But there are a lot of people in your position that are the interviewer or whatever. They come in with a very closed mind. They've got a set of questions. They've got a direction they want to go. And so I do those interviews too. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But they're boring for me. I mean, as the person, it's just not. It's a two-way street. I mean, I've been like, man, this fucking. I've done some interviews where I'm like, Jesus, who the hell is going to listen to this guy? This is like, I want this interview to end, and it's just because that's my opinion, and then maybe they're just not as suited to be doing what they're doing. That gets back to just because you want to be a game developer.
Right.
And just because you spend 3 years doing it doesn't mean you will be a game developer. And that applies to anything. I mean, I could want to be a, rock and roll star. That's nice. That never happened. I wanted to be on stage. That never happened. It's okay,
And you're kind of making me think about what I do here isn't. I don't even like calling it an interview necessarily.
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't show up with a list of, like, I don't take notes. I don't have questions. Or, like, I am in the business of, like, having conversations with people that I think are interesting and then sharing that with other people who are interested.
Much better approach. I like it.
Like, that's just, for me, that makes more sense. Feels more human. It may not be as successful as, like, I don't know, a PC gamer, like, article with like, okay, so
they have a captured audience though too.
Right.
You see, in what we're doing today, and one of the things why I talk to people email me, not as much anymore. Now they mostly private message me or they get me on whatever form of social media. The beauty of technology, even though I don't like the censorship that's going on, the fact is we now have mediums where people can communicate. Regardless of what they're communicating, the mediums exist that never existed before. I talk to people, I get up real early every day. I talk to people all around the world. This is phenomenal. This is great.
Yeah.
And, some people will ask some things. I mean, I usually answer, but some people write shit. And somebody the other day wrote me something about, oh man, the whole game. And, they were questioning whatever. My morality, maybe is what it was, in terms of the game and whatever. We're in March; it's Women's Month. I'm pro everybody, okay? And then they were questioning something, and I said to them, I said, "Look, I let you piss on me in the game. I don't fucking care. It's a game. Here you are. They're trying to insert into this whatever dialogue we're having some holy." Whatever, what the fuck are you talking about? This is a game.
But that's human nature, right? Like
I don't know.
Are designed to look for patterns, right?
I just was like, dude, I think you're missing the whole plan here, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm not taking it serious. This is not a guideline for life. It's Postal. Play it, have fun.
Yes.
Do whatever you want. But there are people that take it very like, well, I'm getting the sense that this is getting the sense. Set people on fire, piss on them, have fun. It's a game. I always talk about violence belongs in games, not on the streets. Don't take it so serious. I don't know.
I don't know what to say. Other than that, I don't understand why people can't separate art from reality. Like, there seems to be an obligation. I don't know if this is recent. I feel like it's probably been going on since the beginning of time. But people look at art and they expect it to be like a reflection of the society they live in. And to an extent, I see the wisdom in saying that. Like, okay, you wouldn't have made Postal had you not been seeing what went on in the world around you, and then made it as a some sort of amalgamation of the things that were going on in your head. But that doesn't mean that everything has a political agenda. Right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to kind of like look at I've told Mike several times, like, I think Postal is like the South Park of video games. Not that South Park didn't make their own games, but like, this is satire. This is not meant to be taken.
We've been called that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think you have a situation, and all the more today, with the pandemic.
Yeah.
And people at home. What do they say? Divorce rate will be up, and more kids. Okay, because people are spending all their time at home. They got to do something. They're either going to fuck or argue, I guess. I don't know. But I think that people need to kind of take a step back, take a deep breath. And it gets back to what we spoke about earlier in the conversation. It's a game. You play it. Have fun. If you're doing something for business or work, that's of a more serious nature. Do your best. Do a good job. It goes on and on and on. And I think today, I don't know, it's like the cards have been thrown up in the air, and we don't really know yet where they're going to fall, or heads or tails, or it's okay. It's okay. People ask me like, "Hey man, how you doing? Hey man, did you get the shot?" I'm like, please don't even. I'm just thankful to be here. I mean, that's all. I woke up this morning. I knew you were on the schedule. I had some other folks come early at 7:00, so it was good. We're here.
That's another thing that I wanted to get into was you guys were one of the first companies that I'm aware of anyway that took advantage of the ability to update the game online to reflect what's going on in real life. So even very simple things like, it's Christmas, let's put snow in the game. Grand Theft Auto does that now, Animal Crossing even does that with everything. Every holiday there's a holiday theme going on with Halloween or whatever it happens to be. And you guys were very quick to respond when you put out Tuesday with like, all right, let's throw some pandemic shit in this bitch right now. Everybody's going to be wearing masks. And that's one of the most beautiful things about not just Postal the game or what you guys do, but just the community of people involved in Postal, is that everybody's in on the joke. Everybody's just having a good time with it. And
that's the greatest reward.
Yeah.
Sometimes I get asked the question, what's the best part of your job, or what do you like most about your job? Very simple. Communicating with the fans.
Yeah.
That's from day one to this day. It's 24 years later. Very rewarding, but also, as you spoke earlier about, very educational. I learn. I listen to the fans. I'm sensitive to it. Some people write me things that are beautiful. Some people write me things that are very critical. Yeah. And it's okay. It's all good. It's all good.
I really liked the other day, somebody posted a review on Postal 4 saying like, they were being very critical about the fact that it was in early access. And they're like, why would you advertise this game and then have it in early access and have it like not a complete product? But like, I thought it was, first of all, it says early access right on the fucking buy sign. But like, whatever. But Mike's response to this was a picture of a monkey shitting in its hand and throwing it and then passing out with the smell of his own shit. And I was telling Jake, because he was asking me, like, what's this guy like? Like, who we're going to go talk to? I'm like, these guys are fucking animals. Like, there's no reason why they should be running a professional business behaving the way they are. But you've done it. And that's why you guys are my heroes.
No, I really think, I speak to Mike J and I talk with the team. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the team are very young. I don't think, after myself, I don't think anybody's 40. Everybody's in their 30s and now 20s. Yeah. And I kind of always remind everybody what an opportunity it is for us to be here doing what we're doing. Amazing. Just amazing. And I also always try to encourage everybody, don't take it too serious. And you have to take time out. Some people are like, oh, it's crunch time. We're in the game development. We got to work 80 hours. No, because in business, if you understand something, if you're going to work 40 hours and be productive, and you're going to work at 10 extra hours to increase productivity, or not performance, but whatever it is your deliverables are, then I'm going for 60 and I can do 80 hours. Well, there's a point of negative return. You're not going to be fucking performing at 80 hours the way you did at 20 hours. Bullshit. I don't care what anybody says. So I always tell people, whatever you're doing, have your own personal schedule. Make sure you always are having time for your family or your boyfriend, girlfriend, loved one, whatever. You have to have time in your personal life. Fun time, play time, go out, play games. You should not be consumed with whatever it is you're doing most of life.
Yeah.
That's going to make for a dull person, a very one-dimensional person. And I also think, especially in our case, Postal is an evolution. It's an evolutionary product. It's not finite. And I want people to recommend. This morning I was online and somebody had made a suggestion on what I thought was a cool idea. And I was like, absolutely, let's get that in. I mean, I don't know if it'll get in a couple of days. I'll know whether or not we're going to put it in. But that's a free-flowing approach that comes about because we've created an environment that doesn't just allow it, but inspires it.
Yeah.
And you have to, from the business standpoint, you let it air. Everything is welcome. That doesn't mean everything gets included. But I'd much rather be in that position where we're open than people feel they can't suggest something. And there's a lot of companies that tell you there are no suggestions. Here's your fucking job. Do it. Draw this. Done.
Yeah.
Draw it this way. Done. Here's a weapon. I want it to work this way. Done. That's a horrible way. I wouldn't want to be in that. So,
I've interacted with a few different developers that were very much like of the opinion that, and I can't even say they're wrong because to some extent I think they have a point. They're like, I have a vision that I need to get out into the world, right? And it has to be that vision or else it won't be worth me doing. So there has to be some kind of balance in that area of creativity because, like, on one hand, like, yeah, you do have to be responsive to the fans. Like, you do have to, like, service, like, let's say you wanted to make a remake of an old game or something, like a game that is inspired by something else from 1993. You can't make exactly the same game, right? Like, you can't take that game and recreate it exactly as it was now because you're looking at it through the rose-tinted glasses. I think I've said that a couple times now. Of what you remember, your fond memories of being a child and playing whatever that game was. You have to take it and move it into the era of now where people can actually pick it up and play it on their console and have the controls that are, intuitive to them in this day and age. I mean, one of the best examples I could really think of would be if you were to take Postal 1 and release it now, with exactly the same control scheme, everything exactly like it was, I mean, it wouldn't have the same impact that it did. With the same graphics. I mean, there's a market for retro graphics and everything, but like to some extent, people need to be serviced to. Like, they have expectations.
Yeah.
Those are your people. Those are the people who want to give you money. So why would you not help them out a little bit? It's weird.
Well, I think when you're releasing something.
Yeah.
There is a level of continuity that you should maintain.
I apologize.
However,
I'm destroying all your records.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's legal forms.
Yeah, that's all.
Contracts for $1 million.
Hey, it's okay. Just let that drink spill onto add another zero.
It's your air filters down here, so maybe your house will smell like what is this? A Barrio Rojo.
That's okay. It's okay. But, I'm looking around here. We're sitting in my home office.
Yeah.
And, man, I just think about when I got this house, how it's changed over the years, things on the wall. I mean, look at this. I'm not big on masks, but we have our own masks.
We do too.
You know? And it's like
Capitalism.
Mike J wears the crotchy, cock mask. I mean, we just recently came out with the Cunny doll, and people don't understand that, and they're like, "What is that?" And then Mike's wife is the voice in the doll, and it's just great stuff. I was at a restaurant yesterday. I had Crotchy and Cunny both on the table, and I had them in different positions. I was taking some pics I'm posting, and somebody came over, the waiter, and he's like, look, man, he goes like, this is a family restaurant. You've got these dolls. They look like they're having some kind of fornication or something. And I'm like, look, recently the whole thing last year that was crazy was wet ass pussy, right? Cardi B, wet ass pussy.
I like the Richard Cheese version of it.
Well, my thing is I got the dolls. We got dry ass pussy, I mean, it's just okay. And then somebody's like, well, do you like... It doesn't matter if I like Cardi B and what is pussy or not. I don't care. It's her creation. It's out there. You like it. You buy it. You play it. It's all good. Don't limit anybody.
You've sparked a reality in my mind now. Like, isn't it strange that we live in this world where it's like we're pro everybody doing whatever sex shit they want as long as you don't like mention it or like let people be aware of its existence. Like you can just go on Twitter and you can put like, these are my sexual preferences. I like these things. I want to be called these things. And I have no issue with that. But then they turn around and you go to a restaurant and like don't mention or even hint at the fact that sex might exist. Like what is going on?
I don't know. That's what I meant earlier about the whole they refer to it now as the cancel culture. I'm good with pretty much, like I said, as long as nobody's being harmed, no abuse, it's all okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the world would be very... Communism is very boring. When you think about it. I remember the first time we went to Russia. Great people. I mean, my God. But one of the things I noticed immediately was most of the buildings were all the same. Their apartment buildings or their factories, they're all the same. Because the lifestyle from the 50s and the Stalin the idea was to keep everything one way. Oh,
you saw the same thing in Cuba, but I mean, there's a beauty to that too because it preserves culture from a certain time. Like in Cuba, they had the classic cars, right? They've maintained the cars that they had before the embargo started, and so you have this culture that's like held on.
It's big business.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I do appreciate it, and I'm glad that we have different countries that experiment with different ways of life, because I feel like this may be extremely if we cut anything from this interview, it'll be me saying this. But I think that what happened in Russia is like this experiment where they're like, we want to have security above all other things, right? In America, we said we want to have freedom above all other things. We will sacrifice our own personal security and take care. We had another amendment after the first one that said security is your own fucking business. Right? So they said, like, we'll turn that over to the state. Like, let's let the state deal with security, and we'll all be secure. And here we said, not everybody's going to be secure, but we'll be able to do whatever the fuck we want. And you get both. And you see how it plays out over time. And if one works and the other one fails, good, fine. But, like, life goes on. It's not the end of the fucking world either way.
I think freedom is a natural...
inclination.
Yeah. So people... No matter where you are, no matter what time in history, people want to be free. I don't think that's nature. I mean, somebody would say, "Oh, this or that." No, I mean, we're blessed. We're here, so we've had this experience and this opportunity. But I look in other countries. You look in Poland, countries that have had major oppression. There's great respect for freedom. That in our country today we're taking, today we're free, which is great, but we're taking freedom, and we're now part of today's vision for freedom is to take your freedom away I'm free to take your freedom away. I want you to think the way I think. I want you to accept the rules I'm going to set. Well, guess what? That's not freedom. And that's where I think the clash is going on today.
Yeah.
The so-called mutual respect. No, there's no mutual respect today. So-called tolerance. No, there's no tolerance today. Okay. And that's something's gonna go down here sooner or later if it's already not happening. Yeah. But, and we'll see what happens.
Wasn't it Franklin who said, like, the man who desires both freedom and security deserves neither?
Yeah, I didn't know if but sounds good.
Yeah, that's. I've been saying a lot of quotes today. I'm just pulling them out of my ass.
Yeah,
these might be all made up.
Hey, I love history. You know, I was a history major in college for a while, and I'm a big believer in we learn from the past. We should anyway. And today, you know, the censorship that's going on is real online. It's horrible. And the whole thing with books or whatever, and I don't care about the Dr. Seuss. Then you have people saying, well, we didn't censor it. The book publisher did it. And I don't care. All I'm saying is, look, let it be. You know, I'm a big believer in you don't like something, don't watch it. Don't buy it. Yeah. Don't listen to it. It's okay. I will not object to anyone creating anything and publishing it or making it available. If I'm interested, good. If I'm not, good. It's okay.
These weren't Dr. Seuss's great works anyway. Like, I'm not going to miss, like, If I Owned the Zoo. Like, I don't even remember that book. You know? If they said The Cat in the Hat's gone, I'd be really fucking pissed. You know? Like,
we're getting today to, I just think the concept of burning books or, you see, to me, I wrote something recently about censorship. I am against censorship 100%. Because if you start saying, well, this is not, you know, we don't, well, no. Once you cross that line into partial censorship, well, now you're into, what does that mean? And who's setting the rules?
Freedom is given and, okay, I'm sorry, I'm saying this backwards. It's taken away. It's never given. Like,
exactly.
The only time people ever objectively earn freedom is through violent protest, ever. Like, that's what we were just discussing Russia, right? They looked at what they had, right, with a tyrannical government with a czar who was like having a fucking voodoo priest or whatever, you know, Rasputin, do magic on his son, and they're like, fuck that. French Revolution, same thing. That's how they got their freedom. America, same fucking thing. And we just had different ideas of what freedom was. Like, for Russia, it was like the freedom to fucking survive in these winters, man. We need everybody to distribute the food and distribute the wealth. Like, okay, that worked for them. For us, it was like, yeah, fuck paying taxes. Yeah, on tea. And now we pay taxes out the ass. You know, anyway, but what do we fight for? But
well, I still, you know, people say to me, oh, you sound upset or whatever. No, it's just, look, there was recently a crazy election. I kind of make it even simpler. I don't see anybody trying to get into North Korea. I don't see anybody leaving America to go to China. Okay? I don't see anybody today leaving Colombia to go into Venezuela. Okay? So to me, these are pretty much basics. Now, we can agree, disagree, but we should really have enough common sense and maturity to have mutual respect. I'm okay with what, you know, again, back to as long as you're not, you know, harming and abusing, I'm pretty much okay with it. And so where we are today, we're pretty, let me tell you, 2021 is a lot different than, you know, 91, 71, or 61. I mean, I remember Kennedy getting shot. I remember watching live on TV, Oswald taking it. I mean, I'm a little older. I have a perspective. And I just think that history, there's so much to be learned from history. And what I don't like today is trying to recreate history or limit history. I think it's not just a slippery slope, it's a fucking cliff. And I don't think I would be who I am today if I didn't have the opportunity and the benefit of all the things I was exposed to. My God, it made me who I am, and it's, you know, given me what I'd like to believe is certain insight and my ability today to have tolerance has come with the experience and the exposure and the differences. I mean, today, I'm concerned that for young people and where we might be leaning to go, they're not having that same wide open landscape that I had. And that's a little, not scary yet, but I think, well, there's the old story, the pendulum swings. We went really far left, under Obama. We went really far right under Trump. Now I don't know where the fuck we are. But, hopefully in America, we have a sense of centrism where, look, what's unique about our country is we are an open country. We're a country of immigrants. We're a country of all different people. You go to Iraq, most people are Iraqi. You go to, the old Europe now is very well integrated, but I like patriotism, and I like people. Italy should be proud to be an Italian. English, be proud. I don't know if you're from fucking Nigeria, be proud. If you're from South Africa, be proud. If you're from Russia, be proud. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not offended by somebody being patriotic. It's a good thing. Right. It's, and people ask me, well, look, I'm Italian American, but I'm American with Italian ancestry. But I was born here. I'm American. I don't want to negate my background. It's great, the culture. I mean, I remember living with my grandmother. From Sicily. Here's a little funny thing. They landed on the moon in July of 1969. We watched it on a black and white TV we had. My grandmother was convinced it was a government staged event.
Stanley Kubrick.
She was not buying that we are on the moon. It just was, look, she was born in 1885 or something. She was not having it that there's a real space. None of that. And I loved it. I remember Alan Shepard going up, the first guy, and, in the U.S. So I have all of this in my mental, my brain background.
Right.
I want everybody today to have the benefit of everything going on, now. Don't limit it. Don't close a door or a window. Open up all the doors. Open up all the windows. We talked about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame earlier. The Doors, the group, rock and roll group, I'm sure they're in the Hall of Fame. I don't pay attention to them anymore. They should be.
Definitely are.
I think it was Aldous Huxley wrote a book called The Doors of Perception, and they had named the group after that book. It's not the fucking door to your house. It's all about an open mind. Man, what a great concept. Or you could be sitting on a bidet, like Mayor Bidet Mike J. And that's okay too. But you got to get, you can't just, sit on the toilet your whole life.
Yeah. So one of the things that I like to close out with is questions from our supporters here at In the Keep. And I got to say, this is actually kind of an interesting fact about them. Most of, actually, all of the people who ask questions on this list are in the gaming industry. They are either indie developers or, somebody who does live maintenance of a source port, or even the guy I mentioned earlier who was a translator. So they'll all be mixed in here a little bit. First one comes from our friend over in the Slavic region of the world, Void Inc. He's a developer on a game called Limitless Hunger, which was also, their trailer was also shown alongside yours at Realms Deep last year. But he wants to know, do you like jazz?
I told you earlier about Miles Davis.
Yes.
Seen him live. Tremendous.
So, I love jazz. I'm the only person my age I know who really fucking loves jazz. I love Thelonious Monk. He's my favorite pianist. And I really like Duke Ellington as well. Mm-hmm. My great-grandfather, who also served in World War II, along with this, he introduced me to Glenn Miller when I was a baby.
Wow.
So the in the mood. He had the little flower pot. Do you remember the flower pot it was sunflowers in a pot, and it would push a button on it. It was the stupidest toy ever, but they would dance to
That's the big bands.
I mean, that music is ingrained in my soul.
That's beautiful.
So
You're very fortunate.
I know, right? But you come from an area where jazz is extremely. I mean, I was very close to New Orleans. I mean, that's its own thing. Actually, like the Missouri, I assume, Jake, you probably like got exposed to some jazz too.
A little bit.
St. Louis area.
Yeah, St. Louis a bit. Yeah. I mean, I definitely got to talk to a lot of people that were into the big time jazz.
Yeah.
And of course, I listen. I'm not as like savvy with the names and the specifics, but yeah, I love it. It's good.
Well, there was the classic jazz era, which I listened to. And like I said, I got to see Miles Davis live in a very small venue. I mean, it was like a cafe. Tremendous. And then later in the 60s, early 70s, there was groups like Chick Corea. If you ever heard of Chick Corea, he was a keyboardist. And this was more of a, I don't know what the term would be, but like a electronic jazz.
Yeah.
So, yes, is the answer to our Slavic friend.
Davis is interesting because I mean there's a change in his career. Like there's him. It's actually the opposite of the Beatles if you think about it, because it's like there's the Beatles before they met drugs, and then there's the Beatles after they met drugs, right? Davis was like, there's him when he got sober, suddenly became wildly more creative with his music, and I mean he's doing like really interesting things with the trumpet, right? And I'm utterly inspired by his entire story, because like his drive to like find escape ended like no more drugs. I'm not going to do that anymore, and now I'm going to take music to the nth degree, and it's absolutely fantastic. I mean, if there's anybody out there listening who's like not into jazz, I assume Voynich is
just
yeah.
Do a little Spotify check on Miles Davis. Just listen to a few things.
Yeah.
It's just very moving.
Yeah.
Very moving.
Beautiful. Next question comes from our buddy Zan, who is the developer of a game named Head On, which was also at Realm Steep last year with you guys. He wants to know, are you a real boomer?
I don't know what the hell a boomer means. Like a baby boomer?
Well, so that... to give you some background... Yes, obviously it means baby boomer. But in today's culture, young kids, like younger than me, boomer means like 90s. So Doom is a boomer shooter. That is the like the tag. Like it'll probably end up on Steam. Like,
so Doom is a boomer shooter.
You know what I mean? Like it's like boomer to them means like an old person, I guess, or just
okay. Well, then I would say
past.
I started with pinball machines. I started playing Skelsy in the street. Yeah. Filling up melting crayons into Coca-Cola bottle caps.
Yeah.
So I'm way past fucking boomer.
Were you the pinball wizard?
I mean, yeah, I know I could afford to play. It cost money. I used to stand around the pinball machine and watch people play.
Yeah. Because
I didn't have money to play. You know what I mean? So
that's interesting. Because you kind of came around during the arcade era, right?
Yeah.
So
before there was the arcade, there was pinball machines.
So you were learning the game by watching other people play, like just standing there. You didn't have the option.
Well, that was it. And it was back then it was a quarter, I think. You put your quarter on the machine for your turn, and I didn't have a quarter. So I just watched people play.
So how do you feel about Twitch?
The whole Twitch thing to me is, thank God I'm still physically going. Anything, we spoke about mediums before, okay?
Yeah, like future fortune tellers?
Yeah. Well, it's like, today there's so much. I can't do it all. I don't have the time. I mean, first of all, I don't have the time to do a lot of things. And, it's funny. Last night I got this new puzzle block game. When I have my release time, I play puzzles.
Right.
I don't know why. Maybe it's something I did as a kid, long before they were digital. But and I do that kind of thing. But I just think it's a good thing today to have so many different options. But regarding the boomer thing, I'm not sure I really understand it. But if boomer refers to the 90s, look, I was born in the 50s. So to that question, I would say I'm not even sure I could properly address it other than the way I have.
Yes.
Next question.
Yes. So, all right. Next question is from Moleque from Brazil, and he wants to know, he's a huge fan of yours. I have to actually digress for a moment. He has been, I think I emailed you first a year ago. I'm sure you get a million a day, but like I was like, hey, would you be interested in an interview? And you're like, yes, but I think you were in New York or something. And I ended up getting Mike instead, which worked out great for me personally. So it was a great turning point in my career. But he, at that moment, I said like, hey, I think I'm gonna actually interview Vince Desi, and he was like, no fucking, like he thinks you're like the best thing in the world. I just have to say that on his behalf, and he probably wouldn't say it himself. He'd be like, oh, please don't say that. But you're like a huge inspiration to him, and he wants to know, do you think that Uwe Boll did a good job with your movie?
In the beginning, my early criticisms were the following. I thought the movie was too long. And I thought the edits should have been more timely in terms of it just dragged and dragged. Having seen it and as it's aged, and I will say actually there's a strong fan base and a lot of fun people like, oh, we don't like Uwe, Uwe's crazy, his movies suck, but the Postal movie was his best movie. And a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
And when I look today at movies and film in general, it's far from the worst movie that it's been acclaimed to be. It's just... Uwe's an interesting guy. I like him personally. Would I have done things differently? Yes, but that's okay. It was his choice. He was the film director. He made it. We licensed the rights to him, and it was fun doing it. I mean, I had a blast. I mean, yeah. I was never like on a movie set like that. I was on a porn set in the 70s, but I never was on a,
Was it really like Boogie Nights?
Yeah. Well, I did see Boogie Nights. I don't remember it well.
You don't remember the movie well, or you don't remember the porn set well?
Well, I remember being on the set. A friend of mine was the producer. And we were somewhat financially involved in this event. And I just remember like, holy shit, they had it was two cameras, and one camera was like really, the first camera it made sense. The second camera was like, that girl is like not even paying attention. What is she doing? And then I later found out that they were both lesbians, and the first camera girl, it was her lover. So she got the gig. And then I just remember there was a scene where the fucking girl starts blowing the guy. And then it was like, cut. And I'm like, cut? What's going on? And this guy, these are professionals. And it was like, okay, take time out to, blow a few lines. And meanwhile, the guy's just off camera. He's jerking away because they can't have him jerking off for 5-10 minutes. It's film time. And it's like back. He's like, he calls everybody. Okay, get ready. So she had to go back into position, get down, put her mouth back on this guy. I mean, it's crazy stuff. Oh my God. And I'm like, wow. So this is how porn movies.
So I'm actually okay. Thank God.
But
my wife
thank God our friend in Brazil asked that question. Let's move on. That was enough on that topic.
Thank God my wife doesn't listen to the show very much. Okay, so yeah, we got that question down. Thank you, Moleque, for asking.
This is probably not your typical game developer interview.
No, this is actually fantastic. I could go on forever about Boogie Nights because I am interested in all right, we'll delve down the topic a little further. I am interested in the fact that porn has dramatically changed since that era. So you got to see it in the the 70s,
black and white
in film, and that was a time when pornography was, shown in movie theaters. Like, and people would go to
Yeah.
the movie theater to jack off and shit. Like, now it's just like everybody just looks at it on their fucking phones.
Yeah,
It's a totally private affair. Well, private to everyone but your internet service provider. And yeah, I remember there was somebody at work I was trying to explain this to. Like, yeah, porn used to be on film. Like, and they thought, like, the directors behind this really believed that, like, video would never be able to accomplish what cinematography and real directing and Hollywood would be able to do for porn. And, like, they were so wrong because people just want to watch people fuck each other.
Next question.
All right, this comes from Voynich again. He wants to know what's the best advice you have to give to an independent game developer?
Find someone to work with, keep the team small, and keep the project smaller.
Quick, concise, I like it.
If you're a programmer, find an artist. If you're an artist, find a programmer. If you're a programmer and an artist, find a designer. And somebody to do your audio.
Marketing, I would say, like not. To,
Well,
yeah.
It will evolve. It will come because see today, if you're a small group of 2-3 people can build something that's playable, not a full game, you could post it, and it will start to have a life of its own.
Yeah.
Marketing costs money, and when you're at the raw talent stage, you have no money. So you program and you draw and you create music and sound for free because you're working together.
Yeah.
So
I think that's as concise and solid as anybody could expect. And one more from Flambeau, who is he's a developer for Z-Daemon, which is the online Doom source board. So people who play multiplayer Doom. And he wants to know how do you keep a mother-in-law away?
how do I keep
A mother-in-law
how do you
away
keep
from
her
your
away?
house.
Become her best friend.
Okay.
Fair.
And the last question.
I like my mother-in-law.
I do too. I really like my mother-in-law.
Yeah, it's just
Apparently he doesn't.
yeah. But I mean, reach out to her, become her best friend.
The last question is for me. Since we've been in this room, I've looked around at everything. Who is this woman here? And
My mom.
she's everywhere. She's
My
she's
father
all-
gave me this.
I'm going to lead into that. That's my main question here. But I want to talk
And
about.
the very first thing is, good old Jesus Christ, I did that. I don't know, I was maybe in 7th grade when I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Then that's my mom. That was done with a friend of mine, Grigorian in Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
This is Footprints, the very well-known saying, poem, quote. This is my sons and nephews and my dear friend from my oldest friend over 55, 56 years, my parents. And this was a birthday card to me from Sister Judy, who's local. She's doing okay, and she's a Catholic nun who I've done a lot of work with. And years ago, we did stuff for charity and helping poor kids, stuff like that. Stuff that I don't generally talk about. And then here we have Bill Hanna from Hanna-Barbara. I don't know what year that was, 94, 95.
Yeah.
And the frame, as you could see all those, Top Cat and Dino or, Barney and Flintstones and
Betty Rubble, hottest cartoon
Bunny
of all time.
so those are actually, he gave me a set of his business cards.
Yeah.
Those are his personal business cards on the other side. The back is an image of all the characters he created. So I used his business cards to create a frame.
It's so beautiful, man. I wish I'll have to take a picture of it before I leave.
Yeah, you're welcome to take pictures of everything in the
I'll
in the
post
room.
I'll post some pictures on our website.
Yeah, behind you is the picture of me and my two friends, the Rods, my son Michael. And There's right behind you, Mike J. Look what Mike J. looks like 20 years ago.
When he was bald and fat.
Yeah, he was bald and fat. So take that, and and here also I've been always a big supporter of the military, and quite honored to have that. I mentioned, we had donated lots and lots of games during the wartime, and those flags appeared without asking for them. And that's my dad's dog tags.
So I'm going to try to tie this last thought up in a concise way, and I'll probably fail at it, but I'm going to try. All of this this shrine you have to your life, just in your office. I mean, we haven't seen the entire house. We've seen the bathrooms and the living room and the kitchen and everything else, but we've talked a lot today about wisdom and understanding that history means something, and that the knowledge passed down from our forefathers means something. And I want to say personally to you, Vince, like, I've looked forward to this interview for well over a year, and I am honored to have been in your presence. Like, this is really cool for me. As
I'm happy you're here, and especially in the house.
Yeah, and looking behind you, you mentioned already the Footprints poem, which is actually one of my favorite poems. Not because I'm a Christian, I'm not, but I am pretty faithful person in general, and that poem actually means a lot to me personally. I used to, back in my hometown, I grew up in a little town called Citronelle, Alabama, and there was one Mexican restaurant in town, which is not Mexican. It's basically a Mexican themed restaurant in an Alabama town with mostly Filipino cooks. But
Beautiful thing.
Every time I go to the restroom, I would see that poem because it was always in there. And it tells the story of how, when life's shit, Jesus, why weren't you there when I needed you the most? I'm looking at these footprints in the sand, and the parts when my life was the shittiest, you were not there because there's only one set of footprints. And Jesus says, essentially at the end, those were the parts where I carried you. And I'm not trying to preach Jesus to anybody, but I'm saying that poem is so metaphorically beautiful, and that the difficult times are when you need help from a friend. And I know you've been through a lot of difficult shit through your life and through the development of all of your games. And I'm sure the games are like the least important part of that, And I'd actually want to hear your commentary on why that is the centerpiece of your entire room.
My father had it in our house in New York, and he had it on the wall. He had it in a little card, and he had made for my mother a gold little, like the size of dog tags with footprints, and that my mother wore that. Mm-hmm. And when I got this house, he gave me that poster, and it's been up here since. And over the years, because I didn't really fully understand it or respect it, but over the years, to me, in one word, gratitude. Every day, everyone in my life carries me. So the very least I could do is be thankful. So
this is going to be a shitty response to probably the most beautiful thing you said all day, but I'm really proud that the last question ended, and that was the last sip of this beer.
Very good.
Jake, cut it.
Well, thank you so much, and it's quite an honor to have you come here, because you represent the fans. And when you asked where could we do it, whatever, and I said, come up to the Postal House.
Yeah.
And having you here, and you too, Jake, thank you for coming. This is what it's really all about. So thanks to everybody. I hope you enjoyed it, or will enjoy it when you get to listen to this, as much as I enjoyed my time here with you two guys. Take care. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much to Vince for finally having the time to be part of the show. That was fucking stellar for me. I had a great time. Thanks to Jake, my best buddy here in Tucson, for driving out there with me and helping me make sure the recording went well. and just being fucking awesome going on that journey with me. Thank you to Mike J. As much as it pains me to ever have to say thank you to that piece of shit for providing us with the music and also getting me in touch with Vince. And, you know, actually, I love Mike secretly. I love Mike. He's awesome. You know what? Thank you to everyone at Running with Scissors and for everything they've done for me. You know, so much that just Mike and Vince and everyone else at Running with Scissors have given me the opportunity to, and people at Hyperstrange too, making brain damage. I mean, so much opportunity for me created by these people, and I can't thank them enough. If you haven't already, make sure you play all the Postal games, and especially go ahead and grab yourself a copy of Postal 4 while it's still in early access, and wishlist Postal Brain Damage. And thanks to the documentary crew over at Running with Scissors, new documentary that'll be coming out sometime in the future. It's called Go Postal. You can follow them on Twitter right now and keep up with the story. And someone you know, wink wink, will be in that documentary. So, thank you to our supporters: Paul, Moose, Dots, Zach, Alexander, Brad, Red Eyes, Anthony, Robert, Jack, Brandy, Fred, Lord Revan, Tones, Igrax Simon, Immorpher, everybody over at the Flam Fam, to Mike and to Zan. I can't thank you all enough. If you want to be mentioned on that list, all you got to do is head over to inthekeep.com/support and hit up our Patreon page. Everybody who supports the show gets episodes early. They get to know who the guests are going to be ahead of time. They get to submit the questions like you just heard at the end of this one. Try to make it worth their while. And if you donate enough, like $25, no matter what tier you are or whatever, me and Mrs. Motherload will mail you a fucking t-shirt. I don't care where you live. We'll make it happen as best as we can. But if you like the show and you can't support it or you don't feel like it or whatever, I completely understand. All we really want for you to do is spread the love. Rate, review, subscribe, comment, like on whatever the fucking place that you're listening to this. Share it with other people. Let them know. And until next time, stay in the keep.